Very good morning to all of you. My name is Manish Bandik from Manupatra, Mumbai, and I'm going to be your host for this webinar today. On behalf of Manupatra, I'd like to welcome you to the session in this series of webinars which are going to be hosted. And thank you all for the overwhelming response in registering for this particular event. We do actually sincerely appreciate the wonderful enthusiasm shown by all of you and wish hope everyone is actually doing very well in this tough times of quarantine and in this situation what we are seeing of late of working from home. We are trying to adapt to it, so we do sincerely actually hope everybody is doing very well and staying home and safe. Okay, continuing about this particular webinar, we'll be going about this session whereby I'll be making a kind of a presentation on certain topics, and what we would actually like you to do is, in case if you have any such queries in relation to this particular session, this particular webinar, we'd request you if you can actually send in pose in your queries on this particular ID on email. The ID is contact@manupatra.com, which is contact@manupatra.com. So we'll strongly suggest at the end of the session, I'm going to flash this screen again. If you can just make a note of this particular email ID on which not only this particular webinar, but then as I did mention, we are doing a series of webinars. So any kind of queries you would have in this relation, you can put in a subject line, something like a webinar query, and shoot it on contact@manupatra.com. So at this point of time, I'm going to flash this screen again. I'll like you to take to this particular screen, which I'm sure is going to be pretty familiar with many of you. That's the Manupatra login screen, our first page. So like essentially, if you want to get access to the database, it requires you to have to gain access. You require a sign-in ID and a password, the login credentials, or in a IP-based environment, you see that particular message. IP-based users, you can click over here, hovering into like you can see that portion, that message in this particular portion where I am hovering my mouse. So that is something which you actually, to gain access to the database, you tend to do. In this case, what I've actually done is I've already logged in onto this particular database of Manupatra. I've used one of my login credentials, and that's the homepage of Manupatra. So what we see is I've already logged in. The broad topics what we would be covering in this particular webinar, this particular series session of webinar is going to be the topics to be covered. It's a broad overview of legal research on Manupatra. The topics to be covered as a typical judgment on Manupatra. Okay, a search on Manupatra, that's pretty important. Search on Manupatra, filters and navigation, that of course comes once you do the search. How you see a print replica, which is part of the document which is opened. Natural language processing, which is something we have this technology used in nesting in search, is again pretty interesting. Hyperlinking, which is extensively incorporated onto this databases. Integrated citation analysis. Okay, the first topic being a typical judgment on Manupatra, but then rather what I'll be doing is to derive to this judgment on Manupatra, we would be actually going through the search interfaces. So I think I'm slightly breaking the pattern over here and taking the second topic to be the first, is how to go about retrieving data, retrieving a kind of a result which is most desired by me by using one of the search tools on Manupatra. Now Manupatra, the search tool, like the search tools what we have, is exactly like the databases what we have on the left hand side, which is the TOC. This is something which has been enhanced over a period of time. We as a company, we are in our 20th year this particular year, And what we've seen is, of course, the database, ever since we incorporated, the database has been enhanced. This is purely based on our end user feedback. We do have a clientele spread across various sectors, so people do have requirements of different kind of databases. Manupatra is not that usual grind of the mill kind of a product which is only a hardcore case law search database which only gives you a kind of citation search and you pull out a printout. So it's not only a product to pull printouts, it's one particular product on which we have all this retrieval search tools which help you in doing intense kind of research. So just to give you a small overview of our table of contents, the content, of course, we do have a different session in this webinar which is going to further elaborate on this. But then the TOC is nothing but the table of contents. Our content coverage being Apex Court, we do cover Supreme Court since inception 1950 onwards. So that is something which we have Supreme Court judgments as well as orders. I did mention it's inception onwards, and this happens to be for each and every subject of law. Addition to that, we do have all the high courts. Again, this is inception. The dates vary in case of courts such as Bombay, Allahabad, Madras, Calcutta. The date of inception varies, of course. We do have the data 1860 onwards. The rest of the courts, we have it ever since they started. We do also have this interesting section where we have all such courts which used to be India jurisdiction pre 1947. So in law, of course, there's nothing which comes with expiry. You can even have a case law which is going to be pronounced tomorrow, in which one of the lawyer can cite one of these cases which was pronounced by one of these courts. So you do require access to this. We do have this extensive databases covered, and of course the search mechanisms to retrieve that and pull out that information you require. So it's Supreme Court, High Courts. We do have case laws from various tribunals and commissions. These are subjective, so you can see a host of tribunals and commissions we do cover, and we do have a proper index for this. Of course, the search mechanism to retrieve data, be it from any one of the Indian courts or the Indian tribunals or the international database which we have incorporated, and which is going to be further enhanced from time to time. Already we do have a lot of archival data as well as data which is updated on a daily basis for United States as well as UK. Data here starts from 1800 onwards. It's volumes and volumes of case laws which can be retrieved. So coming to the topic of retrieval, we do have search mechanisms. As I did mention, what we have is multiple options on which you can retrieve case laws on this database of Mahapatra. One of the most commonly used search retrieval tool, a search interface, I'll rather say, to retrieve case laws. I'll rather close this window. Okay, that's legal search. Now in legal search, you can conduct a search on multiple parameters. It can be, it's not necessary, of course, that you have to use all of these parameters. What you can do is you can use any one of them. At times you won't have any data except for only one particular field. What we've done is, on the case laws on Manupatra, we've divided them into different fields. So at times if you only don't have any other data except only maybe having a party's name, you can retrieve that data, retrieve that particular case law with that particular parameter. At times when you have multiple parameters, of course, that's going to further help in refining that search and getting you to a much more conclusive result. So you can use in multiple parameters also. What I'll be doing is I'll be demonstrating all such parameters on which you can conduct search, because once you know the mechanism how to use the search interfaces, it becomes a very easy process where you can actually, you have a topic in mind and you know the interface which takes you to the most relevant result. So that is something is being the objective of this particular session. So as I did mention, the most basic search, if I don't have anything else, I only have in mind is a party's name. Let's say for example Tata Motors. Now I don't know it's an applicant, I don't know it's a respondent, I don't know which quote I want to search it for. What I can do is I can simply run a global search. The moment I say Tata Motors and I say search, it's going to fetch me results spread across all these domains, spread across all these codes and this entire database on the left hand side, and it throws me results for Tata Motors. I am getting 354 results. This page we call as the results page. That's the results page. Now what we see is the judgment which tops the list is of 2020 19th of March from Jharkhand. Results on this page, we can sort this in various methods. I prefer seeing my search results on relevant documents, the relevant judgments topping the list. But then at times if you want to see it in a chronological manner, at times it does matter. You want to see a case of Tata Motors which has been pronounced only of late or one of the oldest ones. You can easily sort this by just clicking on one of these options of decision date, which is oldest or newest, which will segregate the case laws as per the dates when they were pronounced. You can of course do that even by cited most, which happens to be very important. I'm going to further elaborate on this particular thing, this being a subtopic which has to be covered in this webinar. I'll be further elaborating on this at a later stage. But then by doing this, what it simply does is it simply places on top that particular judgment where Tata Motors is one of the parties involved, which has been subsequently cited in the court of law maximum number of times, which means Tata Motors, this judgment of 2008, subsequent to 2008, it has been cited, it has been referred in the court of law more than 48 number of times. The moment I click on this particular, I did say the site is extensively hyperlinked. It's going to throw me results of all those 45, 48 judgments where this particular judgment, this particular case law has been cited, has been referred. This particular icon is something what we call as Manu instant. That's again a topic which we need to cover in this webinar. So what happens with this is when I click on this, it gives me all such vital information about this particular judgment, that what I can see is who are the parties involved, which are the acts which are applied in this particular judgment. I can see a prior history, like this judgment originated from which court. The judgment what we were seeing on the results page being a Supreme Court judgment, this originated from Bombay High Court. It shows the case note, which is the crux, the summary of the judgment, and the ratio decidendi, which is the point of law on which the judgment is based on. So the idea of giving the Manu instant is I see the instant of a couple of judgments in the results, and from there I can determine which case law is most important for me to further open up and have a detailed look at it, completely read it, make notes on it. So this is something which actually gives me you can say a synopsis about the judgment. What we can also do is when I say see all, it gives me an option to see the Manu instant of all such cases which appear on this results page. So if I scroll down my mouse, it takes me to a list of all those judgments on the results page, showing me the Manu instant of that particular case law. So that is again a very important feature which we have covered onto this particular session. Okay. Now what we can also do is okay, the right hand side is the sorters where you can sort it. The left hand side what we have done is we've put some interesting filters again to narrow down the judgments. Now, what we have searched for is Tata Motors as a party's name. What we can do is we can further segregate it. If I want to see Tata Motors only for Supreme Court of India, so I can see the moment I click on this is gonna segregate and only throw me results of all such cases on the results page which are only from Supreme Court of India where Tata Motors is one of the parties involved. And likewise, you just click on any particular court and it's going to show me results. If I want to see only judgments from tribunals, I can do that. So one is you can filter this by, you can say, jurisdiction. Then you can further refine this search of yours by keywords. Like Tata Motors is one of the parties involved, but then I want a judgment in which there's a subtopic which is adjudicating authority, or there's a Senvat credit subtopic into that. So the moment I click on any one of these keywords, it's gonna refine this search results of 354 to this number where this particular keyword appears into that particular case law. What we can also do is we can filter this judgments quorum judge wise. You can do that. You can simply click on any particular judge and you only get to see those judgments which are for party Tata Motors. And if I click on for example CJ Matthew, it's going to only show me judgments where CJ Matthew sir has been a judge. You can sort it period wise, a span of period, a particular year, all combination permutations possible out here. So you can sort this period wise. You can sort it industry wise, all such judgments where you can segregate it industry wise, and you can sort it by even publishers, different publishers who have like reported this judgment. You get to sort. This again becomes important is you can filter this by strength, bench strength. What you can also do is, like, if I want to see single bench judgments, it gives me a count. If I want to see a division bench or a full bench, I get this sorters filters out over here. So this becomes very handy where I can filter all such judgments based on the bench strength also. So that is something which comes pretty handy. Now what I'll do is I'm trying to resist myself opening a document because I just want to show you multiple parameters on which you can do a search. So what we did at this point of time was a very basic, search by a party's name. What you can also do is at times you don't have any other detail and you only have in mind is a topic of law, is a subject of law, like let me say company law. And if I want to say within company law, if I want something like winding up. Now the moment the only reason why I log this phrase winding up within double inverted quotes is I intend to see both of them bound together as a phrase. So that's the reason I put the double inverted quotes. It's a very basic boolean kind of a function which is conventionally used in all kind of search interfaces. So you lock this within double inverted quotes and it's going to take it as a phrase into the results which are thrown. The moment I click on search, again I am doing a global search. If I want to limit this search to be conducted in only one of this quotes, or if I want to have a combination, I can do that. So but then even with the filters around, if I do a global search, it does not make a difference. So even if I do a search and I later filter it to one of the quotes, I can do that. So now what has happened is this has thrown me judgments in relation to company law, and our subject in this case was winding up. I had changed my preference to cited most in the last result, so it's at this point of time it is throwing me results accordingly. So the judgment that tops the list is again one of those particular cases which has been subsequently followed the most number of times. which is fulfilling the criteria of being a company law judgment and in relation to the sub-subject of winding up. That's a very interesting icon which I'd like you to take a note of it. Now, at times on this result page, when you see the title of the judgment, you see the parties involved, and when you see this red icon, the red flag icon, which indicates case overruled. Now, what happens is to open a document, I can either click it over here, so it opens in the same window, or I can click on this red icon which says open document in a new window. I prefer it this way, so my result page is not disturbed and I open up the judgment in a totally fresh window. Now, this particular judgment of Allahabad Bank and Canara Bank being of 2000, what we also saw on the search result page was that this judgment has been subsequently, there was a red flag which indicates, which denotes that this particular case law which was decided, pronounced on 4th of April 2000, has been subsequently overruled by this particular judgment of Andhra Bank versus Official Liquidator. That's a 2005 citation. Now, the idea of giving this red flag in the first place being, like, here itself it alerts you like this does not continue to be a good law. This has been subsequently overruled by a particular judgment, and once you open the text of the judgment, it readily gives you a hyperlink to see what that particular judgment is which has overruled the judgment which we've opened in the background, which happens to be this. So that's the judgment. Now, if you notice, even the judgment of 2005 which has overruled the 2000 case, in fact it has overruled two cases. It has overruled this Allahabad Bank versus Canara Bank of 2000 which is open in the background, and furthermore it has overruled one more case which is of year 2002. So similarly, in this case of 2002, if you end up doing a search or if you directly search for this judgment itself, even that will be having a red flag on the search result page which will be indicating to you that this does not also remain to be a good law, exactly like this. So that is one pretty utility point which comes out of this feature, where overruled cases, this is something people do very often ask, how do I get to know this particular case has been overruled subsequently? Because at times I do a search, I end up opening a judgment, I do intense research on that, I do make a lot of notes on that, and I don't come to know if it has been further overruled. It does not actually, all the effort goes down the drain, it comes no handy. So that is one particular tool whereby we strongly suggest, when you have a search result page, when you see that flag, be alerted that that particular judgment has been subsequently overruled. Coming back to our search interface, like what we have seen is like, in fact, we had opened pretty interesting judgment. I would have shown you some more features on that judgment page itself, but then again, as I did say, trying to resist it at this point of time because I want to show you all the search features which are available. So at times I have a party's name, I can do that. At times I do have a subject and a sub-subject, I can do a search accordingly. At times when I don't have any other detail except I read an article and makes a mention, refer to a judgment pronounced by Supreme Court of India on this particular day. So I do have this feature. This is something very easy. So I just select the date and I just say search. I'm sure you understand we'll have a little bit of positive time, so I'm refraining from doing this search because it becomes very basic. You just select a particular date and you click on the search button. If at all it's not a Sunday or a Saturday, it fetches you that particular judgments on which Supreme Court of India pronounced all such judgments. So that is one particular thing. What you can also do is, at times when I want to do a range search, This becomes pretty handy. For example, if I want to do a search on a particular subject combined with a sub-subject, or without a sub-subject, only a subject, from in a range of two dates in between. Let's say I want to do a search for Jan 1 2020, and I want to do it, I won't take April, let's not venture into the COVID days. Okay, so we take this as February, we had 29th this time around. So that's a simple range search. So at this point of time, when I do a search in a range, now it's going to fetch me all such results for judgments which have been pronounced in that particular period of time. I did miss one particular point on this, but then if at all, what you can also do is, at times when you put a range, you can also combine it with any one of this other parameter also. Like for example, if you wanted to check within that particular time frame, was there a Tata Motors involved, or was there a subject like company law and a subject winding up involved within that. So you can do that also. So that is again what I think would explain you about that particular feature. That's the date search. What you can also do is, you can of course do a search, again very basic, but then if I want to do a search on a judge's name, it becomes very handy. So if I have a name such as, let's say, Chandrachud, for example. Okay, so we have senior, we have DY Chandrachud, and if I want to do a search for Justice DY Chandrachud in any one of the courts, like okay, I'll rather take a range for this. Now if I take a range 2012, now this gives me all such judgments, where quite a lot of them, because we've done DY Chandrachud for Bombay High Court as well as for Supreme Court. So it fetches me all such cases where he presided as a judge in the Bombay High Court as well as now in the Supreme Court. So it fetches me all such judgments. So that is something which we can do on a judge's name. Then we have one more search tool on this particular search interface of legal search, where you can search for judgments which are limited only within the case note, that which is the crux, the summary of the judgment. So when I say a topic such as, let's say for example, misrepresentation, I'm only selecting the database of Supreme Court for this. So you get all such judgments which would have the term misrepresentation as being part of the case note of that particular judgment. So that comes in handy. So misrepresentation has to be part of this particular head note. That is something again which is a very basic search. Now when things get slightly complicated at times, as I did mention, this is a beginner's search tool when you have very basic queries of this kind. At times when you want to do a search, at times this becomes more focused. Now if I want to conduct a search on section, let's say 138, it appears over here, we can readily do that. Now if I want to do judgments based on NI Act, I can do that. So now this exactly only pulls out case laws in relation to section 138 of the NI Act. If I want to combine this by one more act, let me take 132 itself, CRPC in this case. So now what is this is going to do is, is only going to fetch me case laws which are in relation to section 138 of Negotiable Instrument Act, and which also where also section 132 of the CRPC has been applied. The moment I click on search, I won't narrow it down this time to Supreme Court, but then rather do a search into the entire database, and what we get is a very focused kind of a result. Now this are both the acts, both the sections applied, we get 8 judgments. Let me, at this point of time, I would of course revert to the other search tools, but then this I would not resist myself this time to open this particular judgment, because I do recall this is one of the pretty landmark judgments which talked about the jurisdiction in relation to section 138. Now, okay, let me explain you how a typical judgment on Manupatra appears. Like for many other databases, getting to a particular page, getting to a particular document becomes the end of their research. But then I'll rather say that's not the case with Manupatra, because even after you get onto the relevant page which you are trying to seek from doing intense research, it offers you a host of multiple things whereby your research tends to start from there. It gives you, like, all these icons are all features. As I did mention, we have evolved as a database based on feedback from our users, feedback from various sectors, and varied requirements. So what you end up doing in this process of 20 years is putting so many things which can be relevant for this fraternity, and that's where people do rely on this database pretty strongly. So that's the way a general template a judgment looks on Manupatra. This happens to be our citation. Once you click on this particular citation, now just have a look at this. This are all other publishers exactly like us who have also reported this judgment. We do cover their equivalent citations, you can say parallel citations. This come handy at times when I don't have any other detail. But then I am reading an article and I only have a reference of one of this particular citations, let's say a Bombay CR, a crimes, or a CRILJ. I only have a citation. We do also have a basic it's a pretty advanced search tool, Citation Search, but then that's pulls out judgments. Many of the databases of course bank only on this particular tool of theirs, but then that's of course available. So getting back to the document, okay, that's the judgment. Now it I did mention this is our citation. It gives you equivalent citations. The moment you click on this icon, it appears like a gear-like icon. Now this is the citing reference of this particular judgment which we've opened. This is a 2014 case a ruling in relation to section 138 of the NI Act, which talks about jurisdiction. Now this particular judgment subsequent to 2014, it has been discussed 46% number of times in the court of law where lawyers have cited it. It has been relied on 31% of time, mentioned 18% number of times, distinguished 2% number of times, affirmed 2% number of times, and dissented 1% number of times. So it has been dissented, it's not been overruled, because this happens to be, I believe, a judgment which has partially overruled some other judgment. Now the judgment template appears this way. That's our citation, the Supreme Court of India, the parties who are involved, the quorum, the judges who appeared in this case law, 3 of them in fact. Now what we see over here is a print replica, which essentially is either we have a court copy of this judgment. So that's a Supreme Court judgment, and that's the actual Supreme Court copy of this particular judgment, which again can be printed, which again can be cited in the court of law. It also gives you access to a scanned image of a journal, the case as it appeared in a particular journal. So you can have a look at this. So this is from Delhi reported judgments. So you have the same judgment, a scanned copy, as well as the actual court copy, which is known as the print replica, which is always on this particular section of a particular judgment. Icons, further I won't be elaborating on all of them because there are a set of other icons which I'll be resisting myself from not actually demonstrating, because they're going to be part of our other webinar sessions which are lined up in the series. So every document on the site, the judgment, it can be printed, it can be saved in multiple formats, it can be done in a PDF format, you can save it in a Word format, you can it gives you option to mail this judgment. You are a user, you want to send it to a colleague of yours, it's a very simple function. You click on the email button, you put in the ID of the person you want to mail it across to, you can mark CCs, you can put subject, you can put your message, and you just send. So it goes as an attachment, a PDF copy to the colleague, the friend of yours. So that's email the page. At times, if you have some serious constraints of space, or for some reason you want to save this documents to one of your cloud accounts, it can be a Dropbox or a Google account, a Google Drive, you can use this function and you can upload this particular judgment to the Google Drive. What you can also do is you can save this judgment to the Manupatra database. This of course becomes available to you until you of course subscribe to this. There are furthermore things like you can create folders and make it part of a folder, which again, as I did mention, is going to be covered in a further session of this webinar series. Now that's the judgment. I did mention the judges, the counsels who appeared for this judgment. Everything again is hyperlinked. The moment I click on any one of this counsel's name, it's going to throw me all results where that particular counsel has appeared. It shows me the acts and the sections and the rules on which the judgment is based on. It also gives me, what we've done, as I did mention, we segregate things on, put it under field. So all such cases which are referred in this particular case, this is the text of all of them. I'm sorry, this are the hyperlinks for all of them, and it also gives you the subsequent treatment of each of this case law. Once you click on the gear icon, it gives you the exact status, how it has been subsequently treated in the court of law. So that comes in handy. Now this case, as I did mention, this is a 2014 ruling. This has been subsequent, this has overruled, partly overruled rather, a case of 1999 where this were the parties involved. For this particular case of 2014, it gives me a status like this originated from High Court of Bombay at Nagpur. So if I want to see the High Court copy, again this is hyperlinked. The moment I click on this, it's going to open the copy of this. Now in this particular judgment, we do have the citing reference. There are so many judgments which have been referred. The moment I click on discussed, I can actually see the citing reference of all those cases which have been referred. How many of them have been mentioned, how many of them have been discussed, how many of them have been affirmed. So this gives you a neat citing reference of all of them, which is followed by the case note, which is the crux, the summary of the entire judgment, which is derived by our editors, and which is followed by the court copy. Now you see judgment, this is the court copy. Now all kind of references again within the text of the judgment, the body of the judgment, they are again hyperlinked. Okay, let me show you this becomes pretty interesting. Now what we have on Manupatra is, we did see on the table of contents we do have access to all the bare acts, but then this comes as a ready, pretty handy tool. The moment I click on 138, it again gives me multiple options. It gives me an option to actually see what is the act. It gives me an option to see what is the act. So the moment I click on section 138, it opens the act. I can shuffle to other sections of the act also. I get to see 138. If I want to see 139, I just have to click on all such sections. Now if I start liking in section 142, it gives me a link to see further. I can see all such judgments which are based on section 142 of the NI Act. So the moment I click on this link of judgments, it's going to open a host of judgments which are pronounced, which are based on section 142 of the NI Act. Now what we can also do is, when we see next to each of the sections, you see the icon of commentary. Now this is something which people are taking a very good liking, because as you see, the acts are in public domain, they are government documents. What we've also done is, at this point of time, for 20 such acts, we have included commentary. NI Act is one of them. Now if I scroll this to the bottom of the document, it says law relating to NI Act. This is by SK Iyer. It's copyrighted to the Universal Publishing Company. So this particular, what it essentially means is, what we've done is, we've given you the judgment, we've hyperlinked the bare act for you, and which is again updated because we happen to be online database. If at all there's any kind of regulatory change and update and amendment which has come onto the act, it's incorporated into the act, as well as it is giving you a commentary by an expert, by an author, which is simplified, which is lucid to read, which gives you a lot of explanation. So that is a particular, at this point of time, we've done it for 20 acts. It's gonna be our focus to include further commentaries. We are getting tremendous kind of response on this. People are taking a very good liking. What they like is, on one page it gives them all facilities, or like everything at your fingertips. I can see the judgment, I can see the act, I can see the commentary. This one, we've also come across a particular feedback from some people, where our next focus would be, once we incorporate maximum commentaries, would be to incorporate commentaries by multiple authors on one particular act, because at times we do hear a certain senior lawyer can say, I do see an act, I do see commentary by SK Iyer, but then I don't relate to SK Iyer. I don't like SK Iyer, reading commentary of SK Iyer. I prefer somebody else. So at a later stage, we may also go further and give you an option of selecting multiple commentaries. So that is something which is in the pipeline and may happen over a period of time. But then this particular feature is being liked a lot by various people in the fraternity. So that sums up the kind of features which are available on the judgment page. As I did mention, there are a host of many more. I'm trying not to open, but then I would rather open this particular one, because we did see this particular judgment on the result page. On the result page, we did see this particular judgment has been cited more than 242 number of times in the court of law. Subsequently, we have this feature which we call as cited in para. Now what happens is, it gives me a comprehensive list of all those judgments where the judgment in the background has been further cited, has been cited. If I want to see the text of that particular judgment, I click on the citation. If I want to only pull up that particular paragraph where this judgment in the background was cited. I click on the plus sign, it opens this particular portion. So it gives me exactly that paragraph where the judgment in the background has been cited. We call this cited in para. It's a wonderful feature. It gives you all such judgments where this judgment in the background has been referred. We do have further tools, which is the authority check interactive timeline, which gives you a proper segregation wherein all those citations where lawyers cited, what exactly, how did the court observe that citation, and how did they react? Was it affirmed, was it distinguished, was it relied on? So that is something which would be of course covered in our other session on the webinar series. We strongly suggest do participate in those also. So that are some of the things what you can actually do on the judgment page. Now reverting back to our search tools, what we can at times when I don't have one of these parameters and what I have in mind is a much more complex thing to search for, which generally is the case where I have a topic of law, I have a preposition of law, I have a phrase, I have a combination of phrases. So what you can do is you can use this particular search tool, which we call as Manu search. Now this is the tool where we can actually say we are using the technology of natural language processing. What it essentially means is when I pose in a topic, a very basic one such as let's say gender justice, and when I do a random search, the judgment by the default parameter on sort, which is relevance, the judgment which is going to top the list is going to be the Vishaka judgment on gender justice. Many of you would be knowing this being a judgment which is very one of the most landmark ones. It set up a lot of guidelines also. So the search is optimized in such a way where you get the most strongest, the most relevant results topping the list. What you only have to do is you just put in your keywords and click on the search button. It's going to fetch judgments accordingly. Of course, at a later stage you can filter this on various other parameters on which you want to conduct the search. Now again, next thing what you can also do is at times if I want to, what I've done is a very broad search, gender justice. Now within gender justice, it's fetched me a lot of results. If I want to refine this further, let me, okay, in this case I also want in gender equality. This time I'm taking this as a phrase, so I want it broadly on gender justice, but then exactly the phrase gender equality to appear in the judgment. What we do is we just put this within double inverted quotes and we click on refine. So we end up getting only all those judgments which are based on gender justice and which have gender equality. Now this is a process which you can continue doing further. If you want to further refine this, it becomes very much possible. Now just to give you a further example, if I want to again search this by, let's say, retrograde step, I'm defining this. Okay, now it boils down to only 9 results. So this can go on. This can go on to degree n until you of course get one result. So you can get this results. What you can also do is at times when I do a complex search, I do a search for this, I do a search for that, I do a search with multiple queries. What we can also do is we can save the search by giving it some name. Let's see. Okay, so I save this. This is saved. Now on my home page, we do have manage search. What I can do is, this is at this point of time, we've saved this by this particular search name of test corona. When I click on that, it's going to open those 9 results. But then what I can also do is I can click on the edit button. I can put in a couple of email IDs. I can select a maximum of 45 days. And when I click on this particular icon of set alert and enable this, for the next 45 days, if at all there's a judgment in relation to gender justice, in relation to gender equality, and relation to the further phrase I had put in, and if it comes out of the court, I would be intimated on my email ID like there's this particular judgment which you were looking out for. This has derived from this particular high court, so it keeps you alert, it keeps you updated that this particular judgment. So this is one of the alert mechanisms which comes pretty handy, a very personalized one where you can set in your alert yourself. That comes pretty handy. I revert back to my results page. So that's how you can refine your search furthermore at until you get the desired results. Now that was Manu search. What you also can do on Manu search is limit your search to only either Indian courts or to international courts. Now let me give you one more example. What we did was a search on a topic. What we did a search was on a particular phrase, an exact phrase. At times things can get pretty complicated. If I want to, let me give you this example. Some days back I had met one of the senior lawyers, and he had this complex kind of a query whereby he wanted to actually check on judgments on this particular topic. Let me rather elaborate on that by demonstrating it. Let's say government. Now the query he had was, there is a government employee, or there's maybe a set of government employees, who have been suspended from service. So the question to be which actually arises is, are they entitled for their salary, and within that period of suspension, are they entitled to get allowances? Now how we would be going around doing the searches, we won't put that entire string of query, because the search, even though it's all that intuitive, it won't exactly match all those words if it is not part of the document. So what we suggest in this case is, we only put in the most strongest word: government, employees, suspended, salary, allowances. This time around I'm using this feature, I'm using this radio button to click on near each other. What this essentially is doing is, it's gonna look for the term government, employees, suspended, salary and allowances in a proximity. By default it has been set to 20 words. What I am further gonna do is, this is a trick I'm gonna do. Now what I'm gonna do is, this is known as stemming, this is also known as wildcards. So if I put a asterisk, now it can be employee, it can be employees, it can be suspended, it can be suspension, salaries, no, I'll rather go with salary itself. People don't tend to pay two salaries in a month. Okay, so allowance, it can be allowances. So government employee suspension salary allowance, and what I've done is near each other. The moment I click on search, now this is going to search for only those case laws where it fulfills all this particular criteria. So what I am getting is only those particular judgments where government employee salary during suspension increments, very relevant, very relevant, very relevant. So this is a search tool which comes very handy when you have complex kind of search queries. If you want one more further example of this, let me rather show it to you this way. If my topic of search is, let's say, basic infringement of copyright. Now my topic to search is infringement of copyright. I want it exactly as a phrase. The moment I click on it, it's going to throw me results which are in relation to the broad subject of infringement of copyright. Gives me a whole host of judgments. A change in topic, I want judgments based on infringement of copyright, but then infringement of copyright happens in so many things. It happens in literary works, it happens in software. I want it only in relation to music industry. Now what I am doing is, we say infringement copyright music, and we say search. The names itself are pretty conclusive. You can get to see this has to be infringement of copyright in relation to music. It has to be some piracy of music. So you get to see Saregama, you see phonographic performance, you see super cassettes, Indian performing rights, all such judgments which are going to be in relation to that. You can of course open any one of them, and at a like you can save them to folders where you have similar things, so that comes pretty handy. So this is one search tool which comes very handy when I want to do a very specific search. Apart from that, we do have the search tips out of here. It's exactly the same what we it also, you will have further things like if you want to search for something within a paragraph, of the proximity increases from 20 words to paragraph, you can do that by /p. That becomes possible. So that is something what we have on Manu search. One of those things I missed out when I did try to show you the result page is, at times I do prefer seeing my search this way, but then there can be instances where somebody would like to have a toggle view of the search, whereby he sees the results on the top pane and you can open the judgment at the in the bottom pane. So that happens on a toggle search. I believe we've clicked on plenty of search results. There is a small internet connectivity snag at my end which may delay the results, but then it appears exactly in this fashion which I mentioned. On the top pane you will have the results which you can scroll from here, and you click on any one of them, it's going to display a list of let me give it one more try. Okay, now it's opened up. Now that's the top portion where you can actually do a toggle view. You click over here and the judgment opens, in the second half, something which I am sure everybody won't relate, but then people have their own preferences. We are bound to do what people, of course, like, so we give you multiple options. So that's toggle with. What we've seen is a typical judgment. We've seen extensively hyperlink. We've seen the citing reference. Of course, on the judgment page, there are a host of things like putting in sticky notes and adding comments, which come pretty handy. So I believe what we've covered in this webinar is more of what we can actually, how we can go about doing the searches on various parameters. I'd like to maybe show you this to end this session, the citation search. At times when I want to do a citation search, I can do it with a publisher. At times I have a citation from any one of these journals. In fact, what we are covering is this host of journals, 336 in total, where we cover equivalent citations from each one of them. So it comes pretty handy. Let me run you through an example. At times, if I have a citation from, let's say, a CC, and if I want to do this for year 2001, I can do that. So if I want volume 1, I can do that. So I'm sure there's a judgment on page number 1. So we select page number 1 and let's say Supreme Court in this case, and we say search. So it's going to bring me a judgment which is reported by one of the publishers with their citation. The moment I click on this, it will open that particular judgment. Now again, it happens in such a fashion. I click over here, it opens in a new window. I click over here, it opens in the same window. So that's our citation, as I did mention. Apart from one of the publishers we searched for, there are other publishers also who have reported this judgment. So it gives you a citation of all of them. That's our citation. It gives you a further treatment of this particular case subsequently. And that's the document we've seen. Now there's one more thing what we do see on the judgment page, but then this is something which comes to you straight from Google. We have extended this feature courtesy Google. So I'd rather say all the credit and the discredit has to go to them. Let me, if I want to translate this page, let's take Hindi. If I want to translate this page, of late we do a lot of business in all parts of India. At times there are senior lawyers, there are juniors, there are associates who want for certain things easy English and Hindi interpretation of complex things. So I would say not very conclusive, but then this comes handy. This comes pretty handy because they can get gist of it. So once you open, there are certain things which can be very misleading, like our citation for Supreme Court starts with Manu SC. So this will read as Manu Anusuchit Jati. So I'm sure nobody's going to cite it this way. So that's Manu SC. And this is available in all such languages which Google does. The moment Google introduces one more language, we'll gladly incorporate that very promptly. So at this point of time, translation available in all such languages. It comes pretty handy, and that becomes possible. So that is, on this particular note, I'd like to conclude this session of webinar, and hope this has been of some assistance to you when you do that search. As I did mention at the, if in case if you would have any such queries, we would like you to write to us. You can mail us we would be very much, you'll get a very prompt response from our side. Somebody will get in touch with you. Once we get your email, you can mail all those queries you have on this particular ID, which is contact@manupatra.com. On behalf of Manupatra, I'd like to thank you all for being part of this particular webinar session. And to end it all in this tough moment of crisis, we would only suggest that we all have some restraint and we stay home and stay safe, to hoping that things get to normalcy and we are back to our normal ways of life. Thanks a lot to all of you. It's been a wonderful audience and hope we meet again soon. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Bye.